Welcome everyone to this week's episode. Today I'm joined by Steve McNamara, and Steve runs a coaching business, the Integrated Warrior Program. That's your coaching business
It's one
name?
of the
One of
programs,
the programs.
Wild Man Revolution Coaching and Consulting.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Wild Man Revolution. And Steve is recently certified or has become certified as an embodied processing practitioner. And I've worked with Steve for a number of years now, probably about.
It's ticking over a few years. I stopped counting after about a year.
Yeah, about 2 years. I've been working with Steve and helping him kind of embody and work with the EP process. So Steve, like I thought we could first just touch on your journey, how you ended up into this, getting into this kind of work, and then we can sort of get into a bit later, like what you do and your kind of unique perspectives and insights, and kind of what conclusions you've drawn, what places you kind of got stuck, what places you see people get stuck, all of those sort of things. Anything you feel might help our listeners who are also on the journey.
Yeah, cool. Well, I could go anywhere with this, so it's
Yeah.
exciting. And I touched on just before we hit record, I don't get to talk about a lot of my past that much anymore, which is really interesting because I'm ticked over 10 years now of having a coaching business and being in the people helping game, you could say. But if I fast forward back just before that 10 years started, like I had no idea that there was this world out there where there was coaches and I'd heard of therapies and psychologists and stuff, but I didn't actually know this world existed back then. And all I remember was if I go back about it's probably nearly 13 years now, is I was working in the mines, which was great for me, but it was a high stress, high responsibility job, lots and lots of hours, and it was my way of managing my stresses and my everything else that led up to that. But I remember a pivotal part of my journey was I lost a good mate to suicide. And not only was he a good mate, but he was the one I confided in. I was a very angry person, stressed out all the time. I was a great example of probably being in fight or flight or stress response 24 hours around the clock. That was me.
So
High stimulants and yeah.
just on that topic, like where do you think that started? Like how do you think you kind of, or at what point in your life do you think you began to orient around using fight and flight as a way of functioning?
Well, knowing what I know now from my journey, and you could call it the healing journey or whatever like that, a lot of it was like when I was so young that there was no actual memories of it. I think what I witnessed from my mum and dad, whatever was going on in that relationship, there was elements of that I probably was fighting to get attention, fighting to get love, or that sort of thing. And even like I was the oldest in my out of the siblings in my family, the firstborn, and seeing the years and my siblings and the difference in the like my brother's the opposite of me. He's the fawn, shut down, avoid, and I look back at our childhood and I go, well, I can see how that played out too because I was the fight. I was the one who would throw a tantrum to get attention. Like my dad was gone every morning to go to work before I got up. When he'd come home at night, he was tired. Like he worked really, really hard. He was not available for me except for probably every second Sunday. And there was never hugs or anything like that. There was nothing. So for me to get that attention or that version of love or anything, it was always to go to that, all right, I'm going to throw a tantrum or fight or be constantly on the go. I remember that as a kid. So it's sort of mirrored in my working life. It was like constantly on the go. I couldn't sit still. I had to be doing something. And that was always like out of that stressed out. Like, what's next? What's next? What can I do? Where can I be? I can't do this. It's like, so there's a lot of that that definitely stemmed from when I was younger. And no specific thing. I think it was like that. And as you would know from my journey, it's been this unwinding of like little bits that developed over time that really instilled that way of being.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And so, what like I'm not sure if you remember, but do you remember how it felt in your body then, or had you kind of dissociated from the felt sense of things early on?
If I was to give a label to it now, I was just like in that constant state of anxiety,
Yeah, you're just
always on edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, always on edge and always if just one little thing, and I can actually remember this back to probably when I was 3 and 4. I can give examples, but it's like one little thing that just had me out of that anxiety, I'd go straight to anger.
Yeah.
Or if it wasn't working for me, or if no one heard me, or I didn't get what I want, it was like straight to extreme anger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my life. Like seriously, that was my life. The only thing that probably changed is as I really understood the benefit of like escaping the world, even though long term escaping is not that helpful, but I was able to get out of the environment and enjoy my fishing and being in the country. That's the only time where I noticed that subside, where I actually could be more present. But then as soon as it was time to go back to work, back to life,
Yeah. Yeah.
straight back again.
Yep. So you used like nature and fishing as a way to kind of regulate and bring your system back down to calm for a bit.
Yeah.
But the issue was that all the trauma was still sitting there, and so you'd go back into the world and it would just come straight back up again.
Straight back up again. And that's been a resource. It's still a resource for me now. It's amazing now. It's something that I've kept solid, but the difference is now there's a lot more enjoyment. I don't have to wait for it to be in there. Of course, there's some excitement when I do go to do that sort of stuff leading up to it, but it's like it's more present. And then when I'm coming back into it, it's not like there's none of that anymore. It's like, okay, cool. I'm feeling more clear now, or I'm feeling more rested or chilled. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not like, oh no, I've got to fight something or there's already a challenge I've got to like go at.
Yeah. So it's kind of like your personality like adapted to survive those childhood environments. And so you kind of became oriented around fight and flight, and then caused you to live in like a constant state of anxiety. And so, through your teenage years and ongoing, like how did that unfold? What did that look like?
So I'm very grateful for sport because I love my sport, but at the same time, it's almost like it brought out all the insecurities in me or all the lack or the I'm not good enough in me as well.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't know that at the time, but it was like I was like really small, but I was awesome at footy, but I never felt like I got noticed as much.
Mhm.
Even if I'd win a trophy or a best and fairest, I still felt like I didn't get the recognition or anything from whether it was my dad, whether it was my friends, and all that sort of stuff. That played out a lot across my teenage years, and what I feel I probably developed out of that, the way I got attention was being like having fights on the sporting field, or that's how I got attention. And then I was getting something back out of that, like some significance, like, oh, I'm getting noticed now. That developed in my teen years. It really did. And then that became another strategy I used, you could say, right through into my 20s. It's like to get that attention and get noticed just got a lot more violent, you could say, and played out in lots of areas of my life in my 20s. But yeah,
Yeah.
my teen years was that. I think again, I was good at sport, and I remember I played my first senior footy game. Like I was like, I don't even think I was 5 foot tall, but I was playing my first senior footy game when I just turned 16. So what happens there? Get around the lads at the footy club, and they're like, "Oh, I'd have a few beers." I'm 16, and I'm like, that was the transition. I was still at school and I'd be down the pub every Thursday and Friday night, them shouting me beers. And um, that sort of, it was interesting. Again, it got me some connection, I found. It got me the significance, all these older guys. Yeah, I could play sport and that's what I was enjoying, but it was more the afterlife that sort of developed out of that. And then the turning to, I need to go out and drink, and which again turned into drugs pretty quickly. I was 16 when I had first lot of speed, and that's when that all started then. And even that part then, it was like the alcohol seemed to amplify things. So the fight, so I got more reputation, but then having the amphetamines and stuff like that calmed me down.
Yeah.
So I was like started getting all these, you could say, sedation things in my life. So that was, yeah, big time for me, was in my teens. And
So,
um
so
yeah,
the drugs and the alcohol, like living in a state of, and like I resonate, like living in a state of hypervigilance. What did
yeah.
the drugs and alcohol do for you?
Well, the first thing I know, it's like I couldn't go out and be in a social scene without having something.
Yeah.
And I actually I know this, I used to lead it. I used to be like, I want to go out, so I need to get people together before I'd commit to going out. Say, oh, we're going down for beers. We're going. That was my thing, and that got me significance too. But it's like, so I got that connection early on, but at the same time, probably, probably 40 or 50% of the time, it'd always end up me getting in fights.
Yeah.
When that changed is again when I would have something like speed or something, it would calm me down. So then I sort of stepped a bit back from the alcohol because I found this would calm my system down. But then that created other problems as well. It was like one problem replacing it with another, where there was never any focus on that. And then you talk about hypervigilant, that turned into like extreme paranoia.
Yeah.
Like extreme, like where I would think people were coming to get me all the time, and yeah, that was probably one of the most uncomfortable times of my life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, I resonate and understand. And so, when you say the speed calmed you down, do you feel like it was doing something like a pseudo version of what, going out into nature and fishing was doing for you?
100%.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, it was like a period. If I could use an example of going out for one night, I'd have a couple of drinks to start. I didn't like beer, but I'd have a couple of these and I don't feel like it. Then I'd say have some speed or something. Then there was this zone of a few hours where I just felt chill.
yeah,
I
yeah,
just felt calm. I felt clear. And it's a great comparison to look when I get out. I've been on a long drive, like a 4 or 5 hour drive. I'm going to where I'm going to go camping or something. It was like that feeling of setting up the deck chair or the chair at the campsite and sitting there. It was just like this calm,
yeah.
but it didn't last. That was the thing.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. I often tell this story, like for people who may not have heard it, but I used to be a heroin addict, and um, it was kind of like I'd be starting to get withdrawals, and then I'd jump in the car, full ball speeding, panic attacks, vomiting, all of that sort of stuff that comes from opiate withdrawal. And as soon as I'd get it in my hand, like as soon as I'd rock up at the dealer's house and I'd score.
Yep.
Wouldn't even need to use it. It would just, as soon as it's in my hand, and it's that same feeling of like, I'm safe, I'm calm, I'm present,
Yep.
and it's just, it became the way that I regulated my nervous system. It was the drug, and even just the feeling of security of having it, not even having to use it, and then I could wait 10 minutes, but before that, it's like full panic. And so, that's what I see with people who go through addiction. It always stems back to some form of nervous system tension and stress that hasn't been moved through and metabolized. And so, how did you kind of get out of that period of your life? Like, because you're obviously not addicted to drugs now, what changed? What happened?
Well, a lot of time went by.
Yeah, yeah. How long?
So if I started that at like 15, 16, it wasn't really till my early 30s, but there was a point where I made a decision when I turned 30. It was the same time I finally got a job in the mines in the Pilbara. So I was working in Melbourne. For 10 years, I had a lot of responsibility. I was running big jobs, but I was like playing footy on the weekends or cricket, but the Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, I was taking whatever, drinking whatever. That was my thing. So it's like I had this balance through my 20s of working a lot, stressed out, but I knew by the end of the week I could have what I wanted, get my fix. Like I say, get the bag of speed in my hand or the pills and be like, I didn't even need to take it. The weekend's here or the end of the week's here. Chill, but then do it again and again. That was a lot of my 20s. But I wanted to go to the mines when I was about 24, but I just could not. I could not. Whatever fear was coming up, whatever attachments I had to the life, whatever it was, I just could not bring myself to go through a process of applying for a job. Never had to apply for a job then. I was good at what I did. I just didn't want to face other people I didn't know. So it took me about 6 years to actually get a job in the mines because one of my mates said, you've been annoying me talking about this for nearly a decade. I got you a job. You need to get on a plane in 2 weeks, have a couple of drug tests. Oh, shit. And get over here. By the end of my 20s, I would not touch anything for probably 6 months at a time.
Yeah.
But I would just was good at suppressing stuff. I was really good at suppressing stuff. I was like, if you want a genius zone, I formed out of my 20s. I got really good at tucking stuff down.
Yeah.
And I wasn't very healthy. I wasn't really training in the gym and all the things that I did that. But then when I got this job in the mines, it's a really pivotal part of my life. I shared this at an event on the weekend, how um, I talked a bit about initiation in life. A lot of us men, especially, go through these initiations, but a lot of them through that pain, that bottom of the well, that backed against the wall, rock bottom. So I remember I got this job, had one drug test to do, I think on the Monday or the Tuesday before the next Wednesday. So what do? Organise a party for the weekend. I'm going away. I finally got the job. Let's all go to Melbourne. Let's all go out. I hadn't been out in 6 months. So what do I get? Oh, it's just one time. I'll get a bag of something and some MDMA and went to a pub and all that. And I ended up in, long story short, I ended up in hospital that night. I don't remember how I got there. I had someone put me in an ambulance and they spoke to my mum the next day and said they stopped me from throwing myself in front of a car. I have no recollection of that part. And I haven't been attached to finding it out, but I just know that that was like this big sabotage had come up for me because whatever was in my system and all that sort of stuff, never looking to put any blame on the drugs I took or anything. It was just me. Like, there's a big change about to happen. And I remember the next morning, my phone was flat. I remember two phone numbers, my dad's and my mum's. Now, at this stage, they'd been through a very messy breakup for a few years. You could say they hated each other and hadn't talked to each other in years. But I rang them both, just hoping one of them would come because that was a resource for me, even though I knew I was probably going to cop it from my dad and my mum I'd be embarrassed. They both walked in at the same time. They both had to drive an hour from different places at the same time. And I just remember that was like a real big line in the sand moment for me where I literally just chose it's like that life's done. I just was so ashamed. So there's still an element where it's like, well, it hasn't helped me process anything, but I was just so embarrassed and ashamed. Like I just yeah, I just felt really bad. And then again, whatever happened for my system to clear whatever was in it by the Tuesday, I passed the drug test. I actually don't know how, and you could say I can't count my blessings on that. I really, I drank a lot of water, and I went to the mines, and that was part of like a cold turkey strategy, you could say,
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, over there they got rules, they got drug tests. I'm like, all right, this is going to support me getting away from that life. I know it's destructive, even if I can go for 6 months. I'm going to go and I'm going to throw myself into work, and I think I had. There's probably a couple of times I come back to Melbourne after my first stint, 7 weeks. I think it was Melbourne Cup weekend. So I come back and same thing. I've been a good boy.
Yeah.
But I had one night, I'm like, I was just, every part of me is like, I can't go back to that life anymore. So I actually drove my car with some of my belongings all the way to the other side of the country. And I decided not to go back to Melbourne.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's a long story short, but I wanted to go into depth of that because it was really important for me because I had a lot of awareness around then that I was super ashamed. And I had a lot of awareness of like, well, I want to make my dad proud now. I don't want to keep being, and my words were a fuck up
Yeah.
because that's what I believed about myself.
Yeah.
And then the next period come where I threw myself into work and that became my, that became my thing, like working for 3 months at a time and 14, 15-hour days and, um, got the attention. Go back to my younger years. I was getting the attention then because it took me 6 months to get a job with significance. I was looking after a lot of people. Had a reputation. It's like a lot of it was a good reputation, like getting a job done, being reliable, being able to like come in under budget, being able to run a huge crew, being able to do what my boss said. My boss was like an older version of me, by the way. Um, so he was like, "Oh, I've got a little mini twin. Go for it." And the other thing that came with that, I had a reputation for being like, "Don't cross me."
Yeah.
Basically, don't fuck with me because if you do, I'm going to lose my shit. So that was not good. But again, it got me that significance. I could get a result with being that way. And that was like going back to my teen years. I can get a result by being angry and being
Yeah.
violent on the footy field. I could get what I wanted.
Yeah.
Um,
So the fight
and yeah,
response kind of, built this life for you in a way.
yeah, a full identity around it.
Petrol, the fuel, like for the fire.
Yep.
And so, how did that? what ended up happening? Because you obviously don't work in the mines anymore. I don't know how long you've been out of it, but like what ended up happening? Where did that road end, and what was it like for it to end?
Perfect. So that loops right back to where I started sharing at the start about my mate committing suicide. So in the mines, yeah, I could do all these things, get the job done, that, but I had two people I could sort of chat to on a more personal level. It was my boss. He was fantastic, but so he should be. I was making him millions of dollars, but he could understand the stresses and that, and he would actually tell me, "You need a holiday, you need a break." He was good, but I never listened to that. The other supervisor, super chilled, easy to talk to, and really understood the pressures I was under with what I was doing. So he was the one who actually committed suicide, and it really rattled me in a way where it wasn't a grief, it wasn't I've lost my mate, it wasn't that. I'm like, my thing was, well, he was living a cruisy life. He was doing a quarter of the hours I was doing. He was chilled. He seemed happy. If he doesn't want to be here, why am I on the planet?
Mm.
Like, what am I actually here for? And just that question alone just changed the way I looked at life. It took me 2 years to get out of the mines. This was in my mid 30s. I'm like 46 now, nearly 47. So I've been out of the mines for over a decade. Um, but that had me ask different questions. I started just getting into motivational stuff, like without anyone knowing, because it was like, I can't be seen to like starting to want to improve or anything. I noticed that I really started really struggling being up the front in the mornings to be able to do the pre-start in front of a lot of people. I really started to struggle with a lot of emotion then. I used to have to drive off the work site in the day and just have uncontrollable tears come up. I didn't want anyone to know about it. And yeah, it took seeing a mate of mine go to a retreat in Bali and me reaching out to him and say, "What are you doing? Like, I thought you had your stuff together, your life together. Here you're talking about cheating on your wife and you're depressed and unhappy. What are you doing?"
Mm.
And again, long story short, that introduced me into you could say personal development, the coaching space, and yeah, even though it petrified me, I knew by then that I couldn't be in that high stress life anymore. I couldn't be this angry version of me that it was no good. I was not in a very good mental state. I was unhappy. I was depressed. I wouldn't give myself that label back then, but looking back now, I'm like, yeah, I was depressed as like I was.
Yeah. And so as that was kind of, and that's usually what happens. We end up being cornered into
Mm.
change, like we can't do it anymore. Some people call it rock bottom, but it's like checkmate, it's like you've got
Well, you
no.
know a funny thing about it? Here's the thing, and this is so, I'll say it's a funny thing about it for me, where I actually had a lot of choice then.
Okay.
And I got offered a superintendent's role over there. Like the mining industry had quietened down. I was kept on. I was the only one in my company kept on because it goes in waves of mining games, about a 7 year cycle. They do a lot of infrastructure and then it dies down, but they kept me on because they did not want another company to pick me up. And
Yeah.
then I got offered. It's like, okay, here's a superintendent, cushy job, 300K salary. Not many people know about this. I didn't tell anyone about it because I was done. But I had that in the back of my mind. I'm like, but they put a bit of a catch on it. They go, oh, but you can't be this angry version of you anymore. You
Mm.
gotta you gotta work on that. And I couldn't face that.
Yeah.
Little did I know.
You had choices, but yet, like, do you think you could have chosen to stay the Steve that you were back then?
Oh, nah, that was gone. That instant I asked that question when my mate committed suicide. That was gone.
Yeah.
That's when I doubted every goal I'd ever set, everything I'd ever strive for, and I accomplished a lot. Like I made a few $1 million in the mines. I had success in my life on the outside. I had a lot of things. I could do what I want when I want. All the things that I love talking about now. But it was just that version of me. I just couldn't be it anymore.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's what happens for people. It's just the suffering, the internal suffering. It can
Mm.
become too much. And often that's when, like, I say when things crack, that's when the light comes in, and suffering creates, like, erodes us down. And so, like, as you came into the coaching space, what sort of things did you do? What sort of practices? What were you taught? What did you gain? All of that sort of stuff.
So it started with mindset. that was the mindset. I picked that up really easy. I was in a men's group. I'd committed to a retreat, but there was like a 6 month program where you show up every day. It was pretty full on, pretty regimented. I
Yeah.
like that because that's how I was in my
Yeah,
work
yeah. It's
life.
like your fight response could just like
Exactly. It
play
served me
onto
so
it.
well. And I was just smashing it. And after a couple of months, like all the other men in the program were like looking at me and I was like, oh, this is really different. I was like, there's lots of stuff coming up for me anyway. But I remember in that introduction to the mindset worked brilliant with me. The leadership, I'm like, this is great. I feel amazing. You know, this stuff like that they got me to train on in the mines and I hated it and all this. I was like, there. I'm like, oh, maybe there's something in this. So, and then I got introduced to a concept about releasing negative emotions. And
Yeah.
I heard that and I'm like, oh, maybe I can get rid of all of this anger. And I believed it.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, we done some time techniques and all that sort of stuff, and I'm like, it's gone.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm like,
I've heard one guy say, oh, like I went and deleted every emotion except certainty, and he reckons he just lives with certainty now, and I
it's like,
don't believe it.
but I was looking for something that was like, oh my God, this is the thing. And I was getting results from just showing up daily consistently. And I could tell it was like my mindset was getting better. I wasn't saying some of the things about I hate myself and that. It was like, wow, I'm grateful. And this sort of stuff that I'd never got. So stuff was working. But then when I heard that, I'm like, all right, I'm inclined to when something I feel something within me or I get a shift or whatever, I'm like, all right, I want to learn this. So not only I'm like, all right, cool. I've gone through these processes, I feel different, I feel great, or whatever. Haven't been angry in like months. I remember I was very good at suppressing.
Yeah.
But I started learning. First, it was hypnotherapy, clinical hypnotherapy, which I still use today. I think there's elements of that which are great, fantastic, um, and NLP. And I learned a lot of this stuff. And the retreats I was attending, they were all like NLP based. There was all these different processes and all this. And I was having some big shifts. Like I was having some big shifts, but the one thing, and this was such a funny thing, I turn back to this. I don't think my brother's recovered from this yet or whatever. We have an interesting relationship, but I remember one time his son was up in North Queensland staying. He loved. I was showing up on social media. I was talking about my journey. I had this new lease on life, and it was like a lot of people loved it. Significance, which was great. But then my nephew was staying with me, and he's like, "Oh, I want to do this. I want to be an influencer and all that." And I remember getting a phone call from his dad one day, and we were pretty close at the time. And I was in the car, and I went from 0 to 100 so fast. And I remember I just got with my wife then, so it was in this time where I'm like putting on I was like, I got impressed by my new girl, my new woman, and I remember her standing next to the car while I was in the car. Like I had the phone and I was screaming at my brother, and it was uncontrollable. And that was pivotal for me on the anger piece.
Yeah.
Whether it was rage or anger, it doesn't matter. It was like, well, wait a second. Here I thought that was that. And again, I got curious, like, what else can I do about this anger response, this like fight response, this identity I built up? And the answer didn't come straight away. I'd found breath work at that stage. That was great for me. And again, like some self hypnosis and stuff like that, I was learning. That was great for me, but it sort of like opened my eyes to, okay, there's a lot more to this. There's a lot more depth to this, and there's a lot more understanding that I just don't have right now.
Yeah.
And I was a coach at that time too. I'd started coaching. So that was like an ego thing for me to even go, oh, I can't be seen and not know
Still
what
with
I'm.
rage sitting there. And so what were the benefits of those modalities? What were the positives? The NLP, the timeline therapy, the breath work, all of that sort of stuff. Breath work's a little different. Usually people come
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
work after they do that kind of stuff. Breath work is
Yeah.
more body oriented. But so what were the benefits? And then we'll go into.
I think for me, the benefits were it was an interesting introduction for me because I remember learning stuff that was NLP in actual processes at an event. And then I'd ask questions like, what was that? Like I was like confused and all that sort of stuff out of it because it's a lot of mind.
Yeah.
And then I remember learning some of the things, and it was probably the sales stuff that I learned a bit more about the benefits of like language and
Yeah.
language, like speaking to there. That was one of the big things that I was learning. And my first coach, I learned some probably distorted stuff around that too, and some probably not that ethical stuff around how to use NLP and that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
I could, yeah, but I learned some stuff around that. It's like, okay, in communicating, I was a terrible communicator. Like I was. I look at some of my videos back then that I used to record. I'm like, who is that guy? But I wanted to improve on that, and I seen some benefits in like using language and sort of things like that in situations that was a huge benefit. Setting up for guided processes, I think it was great to be able to guide people into certain places too, like for meditations and stuff like that. It's fantastic. Um, but again, that was some of the benefits. But again, I found pretty early on that I'd learned NLP, I got trained in it, I did
Yeah.
hundreds of hours and all that sort of stuff. And I was using the techniques, but there was probably 50% of the time,
Yeah.
clients would get breakthroughs and you could tell they were like legitimate, they were like going through a process and that. But 50% of the time I was just watching clients resistant and shut down or
Yeah.
just reject it. Yeah.
What do so like, because we've had conversations about this before, like, because there
Mm.
can be a lot of toxicity in the coaching industry, which really, people end up distrusting the whole
Yep.
industry as a whole, and you just spoke about, non-ethical ways of selling and like manipulation and using kind of techniques to trick people and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm privy to this too. I've been in that scene at a certain time in my life also. But so what are some of the things you feel were missing in those modalities and the way they taught it that you see other coaches and other practitioners and everyone kind of repeating those same mistakes, like what's missing in the whole area, because there is something that they're missing that they don't have, and what?
100%. Yeah. Yeah, well, I've got an easy answer, but I'm not going to give you the easy answer for that because I think you know
God.
the answer. It's like, but it's been a journey for me, as you know, to go from judging the coaching industry and everything that I've learned over the time to be able to come to terms with it's like, actually, there's just hasn't been enough education out there.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really struck me when I realized that some clients couldn't access certain things, I started intuitively being present to them and then having them guide them into their body more. That was one thing I intuitively did. And that was against what I got taught in NLP. In NLP, it was literally what I got taught. I don't know if this is the same across the board. It's like, well, you can't get them to access anything, any memories in that. You can't get them in their body.
Yeah.
It was literally a line, and that struck me as really weird, just intuitively,
It's like
and
a dissociative process.
100%. And it was like going and I'll replace that emotion with that one, choose a different one.
Yeah.
Like, I can giggle at that now because I'm like, oh, that doesn't even make sense. But that was some of the process, or it was like the only body stuff involved was like, all right, now go do some tapping. I'm not knocking tapping; it's great, but it was
Yeah.
like
Right. Yeah.
didn't really mesh or gel, in my opinion. It didn't feel like that made sense. So it was the whole somatic piece, the body piece, the nervous system piece that was not really even spoken about in all of that work.
Yeah.
And I got introduced that in the breath work. That was, for me personally, the experiences I was having where I could actually felt like I could feel through some emotions. And it wasn't just the big releases in that. And as you know, that's not really what we're after. We're after that, like the energy moving through the body. But I was getting that too, and I was noticing it myself. So when I started introducing that to clients, I could notice where I could take them through an experience where they could actually feel some more stuff that they were locked off from.
Yeah.
And again, fast forward, then found the likes of yourself and EP, and it just joined a lot of dots for me. It
Yeah.
just again, it just joined a lot of dots. And there's a lot of people go back to part of your question about the coaching industry. And again, not knocking it. A lot of my friends are coaches and stuff like that, but I still see a lot of them still do the thing where it's so mind based. It's
Yeah.
all mind. It's like, let's think your way through them problems that you created. And it has no, even the time techniques and timeline is still a mind journey. There's no actual body stuff involved. And I see so many people jumping from coach to coach or course to course and program to program where that aspect of the somatic with a lot more education, by the way, too, I've noticed that. It's not in all that stuff. It's not.
Yeah, I think that's, Melissa from the Center for Healing created root cause therapy. She's similar
Mhm.
kind of journey, where she was doing timeline, lots of timeline therapy, but was just completely dissociated from her feelings, and then
Yep.
we created root cause therapy out of those insights, which is much more inclusive of feelings in the body. And, and it's like what I noticed in myself and in people who have really been in that industry, and been from coach to coach, kind of done a lot of timeline, etc. This is what happened to me. It was like you go through these cognitive processes, these imagination things, but it's like trying to heal a broken leg by imagining your way out of it, and that what can end up happening is we convince ourselves that our leg's not broken anymore, and we live in a kind of dissociative cognitive distortion until usually it shows up in relationship. Our brother calls us, and we're screaming at him,
Yep. Yep.
because we can convince ourselves out of reality. And for me, and this is what embodied processing is really all about, is healing has to be embodied. It has to be integrated into our body. And if it bypasses that, you know, it's not a really, authentic healing. It's more something that's just happened in our mind. And but in saying that, this is why I always ask, was the benefits, there is a benefit to gaining insight, it starts
Yep.
first in our mind and later drips down or bleeds down into our body, and we have to kind of get to that place of our own accord, usually again through suffering, it's like, or through situations where we can no longer lie to ourselves. It's like that. It's a process of being humbled, over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. There's only so much humbling you can take, I reckon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. Like I still use like there's so much of the training in that it's just interlinked in what I do now. And it's that whole embodiment piece that just makes it different. Like even me and my wife now, like when we're running events where we work together, she does a process called Koya, which is a lot of body movement and intention and an element of like really connecting in with the what the body's showing. And then we take it into some more breath work and then presence to what the body's doing and moving through. And again, the nuances that EP has taught me around that stuff that we were already doing, but it's given us so much more depth and understanding that it's like it's brought a lot more patience into the work we do, and it gives the client or the participant way more of an embodied experience,
yeah.
where it's not just I had a big release. I go back into the world and everything still doesn't work. It's like, wait, actually, I can feel like something shifted within me energetically. All right. It's like now there's probably some space created or not
Yeah.
just a different, not just a different belief implanted or chosen. It's like, actually, I'm seeing and feeling things differently.
And what's it been like for you to come down into your body? Like, how has that unraveled for you? Like, were you surprised with the depth that some things go? Like,
Is that
what
is that a rhetorical question? Of course, I was surprised.
should be surprised, but so like how has that been for you to come down into the body? Like, because it can be quite confronting, what exists, and to,
So
do it in a safe way, a way that isn't just like jumping in the deep end, a way that's, it can be slow, and
So
micro
yeah.
shift sometimes, but what's it been like to really start to inhabit what it is to be you?
So I think the first part when I think of this, I go from how I used to go about things when it comes to like working through and working on myself. It was like that whole, all right, I've got the problem. Here's the anger. I want to sort this now. Get in, get out.
It's like I
And
need
I
to
reckon,
fix myself.
yeah, and it's like probably the first 7 or so years, it was that. I was very impatient, like, fix me.
Yeah.
And I think when I got into this work and the patience that comes with it, the subtleties that come with it, the presence that's needed with it, the like there was that whole period where I needed to process like depression and apathy. Like that was not something that I was looking to go into or wanting to experience, but I needed to because I think it was what we were working on, that distorted willpower that I'd lived my whole life with. That fight response, I'm just going to willpower my way through of it from this distorted, I'm not good enough place. And it
Yeah.
was like in that process, the patience and the subtleties, um, that taught me to be in my body and taught my body then to feel safe enough to be able to actually feel them things.
Yeah, I remember that period, and it's kind of like this wound of I'm not good enough, and then on top
Mm.
of that, it's the fight response, which created like this kind of distorted will, an
Yeah.
unintegrated will, and it's like it paints everything you've said. Your story paints a perfect picture of that, with footy, and then the drugs, and then the mines, and how it was with your parents and all that sort of stuff. This fight response became your fuel, your willpower,
Yeah.
but it was just overcompensating for this deeper feeling of I'm not good enough, a sense of lack. And then it sets us up on this like kind of treadmill, where we can never ever feel good enough. You can't
Yeah.
get there, that way.
No, you get close enough to the shame, and then well, my thing was take action, get away from it quick.
Yeah, exactly. Not good enough.
Go accomplish something, go achieve something, so you'll feel better about it. And you don't really feel better about it when you achieve it. And it's like, well, I feel ashamed again. I don't want to feel that. Let's take action again. Let's do something else.
Fleeting moments of relief.
Yeah. And that's been the fascinating thing about the journey. If I like going into sessions and stuff, some of the sessions we've been have been really like profound, but it's been the subtleties of the shifts internally I've felt in the energy of the emotion where it's like this, my system would fight it so hard, but then there'd be this subtle shift where it was feeling a bit of anger or feeling a bit of depression or helplessness. Then all of a sudden, I would just feel something shift through me, and it was like, wow, that was like, what was I fighting it for?
Yeah.
Like, it's just the system had fought it for so long, and yeah, it's been I know the last few years have been a patient process for me, and but really, it's allowed me to be able to start to create the life I want from a place of like feeling whole and feeling good enough,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's taught me a lot in itself.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And so what's it been like so to spend, what was it, 40 something years not being in your body? What was it like to then, actually learn and develop the capacity to feel what is uncomfortable within and learn to actually hold it and relate to it in a different way? You spoke about running away from the shame,
yeah.
but in a process of learning to turn towards it and learning to regulate it and come out of getting stuck in it and be with it. And like you spoke about that word presence, it's kind of the opposite to what you were doing before.
100%. And I think I've developed this over time. Like when I find something that I notice a change, I stick with it and I go with it. Like I've had a practice I do every morning for a decade. It's definitely evolved, but that's evolved in the way of that presence. But my understanding, the depth of understanding, and going on this journey through EP and everything, it's actual true presence now. My practice used to be I've got to do a practice because I need to get this out of her. I need to do that. Even breath work. All right, I'm going to do breath work so I can have a release or feel. But the last few years, it's like that presence is actually true, and it's like being building that rapport with my body. You could say where I can be with something and allow it to be, not make it mean anything, not judge anything, not go, oh, I feel like crap, I don't want to, and try to replace it with a good feeling. It's just like it is what it is. And it's not as draining.
So the purpose of practice is practice. It's like not to fix anything, etc. I remember Alan Watts once saying, if you're meditating to get somewhere, then you're not meditating.
That's
Meditation,
why I don't listen to guided meditations much. It's like,
yeah.
well,
But meditation has no purpose.
yeah,
If you're meditating for benefits, then you're not meditating. Meditation is just pure presence. And so
yeah,
we can bring that into all our practices. And, so like that fix it attitude that you spoke about, we do talk a lot about that in embodied processing because it just plagues the self-improvement world. Even the term self-improvement implies current present self-rejection, you know.
yeah, yeah,
And so, embodied processing really is a shift in orientation where we're coming from self-improvement and self-rejection to self-acceptance. We're simply being present to learning to be present and relate to ourselves in a different way. And, it's like everything that we do, it's just built into our culture,
yeah.
is the opposite of that. It's there's something wrong with me, dot, 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 and I need to fix it. So then in the mornings we wake up or when we're meditating, etc., it's, it can be such a relief to kind of drop that anxiety, like there's something wrong with me and everything I do is to compensate and try to fix that feeling. And so what are things like now? What's the biggest change, that you've noticed just from that giving up wanting to change, kind of like that.
Well, here's the thing. We talk about that distorted will. If I look at my last few months, I've been so driven, not from I need to do this to be driven. I will get up in the morning and I just feel really excited about things. And there was a long period of time where it was, oh, I get up in the morning, I'm driven because I have to. I need to get that thing or do that thing to make me feel a certain way. But now it's like, and again, it's only really seeing the tangibles happen in the last few months. It's been a long journey, but it's like that again, the willpower is there now,
Yeah.
but it's like, oh, because I really enjoy this. This
Yeah.
is like,
Yeah.
I'm more present to the things I'm doing. Like in my business, like I haven't stopped working in my coaching business, but the last year, it's like I've set up a startup again. I've started from scratch. I've been building out the back end and stuff that I never used to like in that. I've always loved helping clients. Absolutely. That's been, if anything, that's probably the thing that's kept me going through a lot of the harder times where I've been like in limbo with what I want to do and not excited about life and stuff. But the last, yeah, 12 months, especially last 6 months, some of the stuff that I've created, like this creativity has just come out of nowhere, you could say. Like more more like probably when I was younger, where I'm just creating things and it's enjoyable and
Yeah.
it's like even with the challenges aren't as hard anymore, even though they're challenges. Some of them have been really big.
Yeah.
Um, they're not as hard. There's not the oh, I'm not going to be able to do this thing, and then that distorted will hasn't kicked in. It's like, oh, I've got to force my way through this and punch my way through this. Just stay up till midnight and work harder. That hasn't come in. It's been more trusting, more, like I say, presence to what I'm feeling, and more allowing it to unfold. And that's a new feeling for me. That's
Yeah.
like I haven't experienced that in my life.
Amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so what is it that you offer your clients these days? So you're recently certified in embodied processing, so you're offering that modality. And what are some other things like what Steve's offering if people wanted to come and see you?
So my whole thing is like this integrated warrior. And it's even coming to that and really owning that because it's like a snapshot of my journey, really.
Instead of the distorted will.
100%. Because I'm a hard ass. I'm a hard ass coach. I love that. I love the military style. I've always had that. I'm really good at it. I'm good at leading. I'm good at like teaching leaders and leading leaders. And I'm really good at being strong with men. Like I love working with men. So I've developed like my retreats. I've run retreats for ever since I've been on this journey. But my retreats now are very integrated. They're more embodied. There's a lot of body stuff involved. There's a lot of stretching. There's a lot of relaxing too, in amongst some physical. But then there's a lot of what I've been able to bring in with my learnings and understanding around EP and the nervous system body. I've been able to bring a lot more nuances into them retreats that I've done a bunch of men's retreat. They don't have it. They're all push, 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 force, 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 squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. So my retreats are more like, let's be more present. Let's help you get into your body. Let's be present to whatever's coming through, and let's give you some tools to be able to regulate and do that. That's what my retreats are about. And there's some cool processes. I've learned some great processes. Again, I don't throw out all the NLP stuff and that. There's some stuff that really suits.
Yeah.
But with the combination of like what I've really learned with EP, I just feel it gives a far better embodied experience where there's actual shifts that create long lasting change versus come to a retreat. Oh my God, my world's changed. And 2 weeks later, they're back where they were, if not doubting themselves or not loving themselves or in fear more.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the integrated warrior retreats. I also do a mastery program because again, I love the whole concept. It's been my journey of doing little bits over time with a compound effect to get long lasting results.
Yeah.
So again, even the way I go about that with the accountability I have, again, it's very structured. There's a lot of structure in what I do. I think it's a really helpful masculine energy that I bring to all that work, as a lot of us are lacking structure and organization and direction. So again, I bring in the goal setting, very thorough, but always going into like the values and the deeper values. How have we developed our values? Like, are they motivated in something we actually desire, or are they fear based? So I go into a lot of that in there, and I bring what I call emotional mastery in there, which is basically an addition to that, what I've learned in this journey over the last few years around the body and the nervous system um, and that in there, and even that's evolving as I do it. And again, it's been great to have the EP now to support clients with instead of them doing a program and then having this coaching package when they probably don't need the full coaching. They
Yeah.
probably don't need to go right through their life and let's go through every part. They literally just need the support with processing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It makes total sense. And so people can come and see you one on one, or they can join one of your programs. So what we'll do is we'll put links below, Steve's website and contact information. So if anyone wants to work with Steve, they can contact him through there. But thanks, mate. It's been great to hear your journey and speak about all this stuff. And we'll have to do another one once maybe the breathwork training comes out later in the year, and one specifically on breath work, because I know that's been a huge part of your journey. You do it every day still, don't you?
Absolutely. If not twice a day, some days. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it's been a pleasure to have you, Steve, and I look forward to chatting again.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate you having me on.
Appreciate it, mate.